do that. I'll do it. I did it. So we're recording now. And just for kind of general logistics things, the chat is open for people to write in, and Nancy's going to read and talk about this book for the first 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we'll have time for conversation about it. And so really, as you're listening, think about things you want to ask about, you want us to talk about. You can, at the end, you can raise your hands and unmute yourself and talk, or you can write things that you want to have asked in the chat. And Elizabeth will be watching the chat and pulling all those questions together. And if you have any problems, questions, technical issues going along, Elizabeth Pangburn is the person to send a message to, and she will do her best to untangle things. The Porter-Phelps-Huntington House stands on Nonotuck land. It was built by Moses and Elizabeth Porter in 1752, and it stayed in the family of descendants. The house was passed down through daughters, through Elizabeth's, for the first 3 generations, and that's why it has that long, strange name, Elizabeth Porter to Elizabeth Phelps to Elizabeth Huntington. And in 1949, it was made into a museum. And when it was first made into a museum, the vision was really to celebrate James Lincoln Huntington's forebearers, to celebrate settler colonialism. His aunt had written, great aunt had written a book about the family as well, in which she talked about the ancestry of freemen, by which she meant white Yankee settlers of the land, and celebrating that origin of the nation as she understood it. In the last, well, for the last many years now, the museum has been working to expand our understanding of what stories it has to tell, to really make it the story not just of the family that built and owned this house, but of all the people who lived and worked there, including 6 people who were enslaved on the property and to the family in the 18th century. And I've been going to a number of museum conferences and things and talking about this work with people. And every time I do that, people ask me, well, is your board invested a bit in this? What about the family? Are you getting resistance from the family? How are you dealing with that? And it is so remarkable to be able to talk about the depth of not just support, but inspiration and commitment to telling a fuller story of the property and of the family, that many members, descendants of the Porters and Phelpses and Huntingtons have held and have brought to this. And there's no stronger example of that than Nancy and this remarkable book that she's written that is so full of lyric beauty. And I'm also an English professor, and when I've been doing this historical work, I've felt like that doesn't necessarily have that much poetry in it. And it's just such a joy to have it full of remarkable eloquence. Nancy writes in one poem about breaking through, escaping from the potency of avoidance. And this is a book of poems that does that, that looks with remarkable clarity and strength at some of our most difficult bits of history and brings them close and true. We long ago started calling this series of online talks and lectures and presentations and readings, Bridging the Past and the Present. But actually, none of the things we've done in this series does that nearly as powerfully as Nancy's book, which really explores the history of her family and of this house, but connects it in the deepest of ways with her own life and with all of our lives and with the challenges that we face as a nation, learning over and over again how to live and love with each other with respect and compassion. And I'm just so honored and delighted to pass the reading on now to you, Nancy. So thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you, Karen, for making this opportunity and for your support throughout the whole writing of the book. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm just delighted to be sharing the event with so many of you today and see so many dear faces of friends and family and surprised people I haven't seen in years. It's just kind of like a little reunion. It's wonderful. And I thank the museum staff, Susan Lisk and Elizabeth Panberg, and all the researchers and archivists whose work made it so easy to learn about the family. Some people who start looking at their history have to do incredible amounts of, footwork to just begin to unearth the littlest bits. And here I have it all sort of handed to me through this amazing museum. And the house itself and what is now the museum was really the birthplace of the book. And as Karen mentioned, the Stoop and the Steeple, and the title will become clear as we go on, is a really complex interplay of poetry and historical text fragments. And what I now learn, I shouldn't have been calling it diary all this time, but there's a memorandum book, I guess is what it is, of my 8th great-grandmother, Elizabeth Porter-Phelps. And I'll read about 10 poems and connect them with some comments that give you one of the interlocking storylines of the book. And I'll pause so you can absorb between poems and comments, but really this is sort of one big story that takes about a half an hour. So don't start looking at your watch at 20 minutes, I'm sorry. This project really began from a poetry prompt, which said to, and tell me if you can see it, to write a book about a historic site. And this tattered covered book was on my mom's bookshelf for all my life, but I never picked it up. She died at age 98 and I inherited the book. And it's all about the house, the museum, but I expected it to be about antiques and provenance and old white people, and I didn't care much about it. And just to get you located, which I don't think Karen did, the house is in a town called Hadley, Massachusetts, and it's farmland about 100 miles west of Boston along the Connecticut River. And these Porter ancestors were among 47 people who founded the town in 1659, when the white settlers considered the area to be a frontier. I don't think the Pequot and Nunatak would have agreed, but that was the impression. And I'm going to read an excerpt from a poem that's called Story Keeper. And I wrote it after I opened this book and read, quote, these words cataloged without comment. And here was the insert: an inventory for the estate of Captain Moses Porter, March 8, 1756. Cash, £3, 5 shillings. Negro man, 400 pounds. Zebulon Prutt, the son of Arthur, a slave belonging to the Reverend Isaac Chauncey, pastor of the church in Hadley. This slave boy must have been the property of the parson's daughter, for she sold him to Moses Porter, 29th July, 1745. Minister, ancestor, women buying and selling people. And then this, quote, when the cock was placed at the top of the steeple, Zeb Prutt, a young colored man, ascended to the summit, sat on the copper bird, and imitated the crowing of a rooster. I know this church, the steeple 90 feet high. Grandma never told us these stories. No Zebulon on the steeple, never, even when I married an African Jamaican man. Mother never said our cow milking, broom corn planting, Harvard attending family were also slave owning. Even when we raised a son only miles away, I must tell him, his children, I spin like the rooster, us enslavers, a man crowing, a man who hoed the sod where we just buried my mother. Now, I know I'm not the only one discovering enslavement in their families. Some of you here may know or suspect that history in your own family, or maybe your family has another story that's kept secret or rarely told. This sort of shocking discovery is by no means unique to me, but this revelation shook me to my northern white liberal core, and I had a vivid dream that I realized was my response to this upending of myself. I call it the night after I stumbled upon my blood owning slaves. I dream a gun fixed to my hand, black barrel pointing out, metal hot, cries bottled in its throat. In the dream, my palm open like a platter. Pistol presses its steely weight. My wrist bends back. My fingers will not close. In the dream, I squall, how did this gun get here? I don't believe in guns. Father responds, we've always had it under the car seat. Still dreaming mind scrambles. I've driven this car for years. My heels so close to the gap, never reached under, never groped the dark, felt the handle. In the dream, I yell at my family, take this gun. I don't want it. Take it. Violently awake, I shake my wrists, my hands, my fingers. I was no longer one of the good guys. My family was not rich. For generations, we were farmers, educators, artists, fighting for social justice. I was active in the civil rights movement since the day Emmett Till was lynched when I was 12. Suddenly, I was the one who laid the foundations of white supremacy in America. This next poem shows a bit how I saw myself at age 22, going alone from New York City to march in Selma, Alabama. It's titled Alone. I hear in jail they beat you with soap in a sock so the bruises don't show. I ride south alone on the Greyhound. After Bloody Sunday, Bull Connor, dog's yellow teeth, the New York charter buses, fiancés, Mel's, carpool had all left. Now I sit prim in my navy blue sheath as though it will protect me. lurch through the night over the Mason-Dixon line. 5 a.m., rest stop, Macon, Georgia. Locals leer as I pick at watery grits, white and slick. On to Selma, up the rise of the Pettus Bridge. Tanks skulk below, slits for windows, faceless. Soldiers, bayonets. Is this America? Step off the bus. Hushed houses, trees lush, lawns trim. Where's Little Brown Chapel? I plead under my breath to a lone black gardener who nods the direction, stiff as a bird. Sidewalk slides to clay. Ahead, sign-up tables, food lines. I swirl into the welcome rumple, a black and white flock. Join the march, 6 abreast, 53 miles, 5 days to Montgomery. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round. I sing from my feet, from all our feet, talk and sing arm in arm. We believe, even though the National Guard, who pockmark the fields, point their guns at us. We believe, even though we sweep for landmines before camping in the open, tarps over muddy ground. Glimpse Dr. King, circles under his eyes. Nursing blisters, we talk and sing into the night. Day 2, passing a shack, I hear the man who lived there was killed in front of his kids, registering voters here in Lowndes County. Matrons limp on, Sunday dresses, curled over pumps. Schoolboys wear starched shirts. Only we whites can afford to be casual. By the time we press into Montgomery, half the speeches are over. Every Black person out on their porches cheers us on. We tromp through their unpaved mud to Courthouse Square. Martin's voice dim on loudspeakers. Thousands have flown, driven, walked in. TV cameras, shoulder to shoulder we sway. We shall overcome. But are warned, run for the Black part of town the minute the rally's done. No cops will protect. The Guard disbanded. Cars of thugs rev against dispersing crowds, gun barrels braced on rolled down windows. That night, word spreads. The Klan killed Viola Liuzzo, driving alone over our chant-filled road. 6 a.m., solo again on the Greyhound. My silent hum. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. They still pull folks like me off buses into the swamps hung with Spanish moss. So now let's go 50 years later, 55 years, when I made this discovery about our enslaving people. What haunted me was this image that you see behind me on the wall, or an image of the image. And this is the same text fragment we've seen. I call it Zebulon on the Steeple. This one was written by Sylvester Judd in the History of Hadley in 1863, but he's quoting a newspaper article saying, 1753, when the cock was placed at the top of the steeple, Zeb Prutt ascended to the summit, sat on the copper bird, and imitated the crowing of a rooster. I can't stop seeing Zebulon on the steeple, hearing his call singe the sky. I can't stop knowing my own ancestors enslaved him. Zeb cock-doodling over the churchgoers, bonnets and flat tops askew, scuttling out of their fresh-hewn pews, the pine still pungent, hands shading eyes, look, it's Widow Porter's African man. I picture him shining like the copper rooster, his sweat-bright skin dark against a white steeple. Do his thighs burn cleaning up there? Does the rooster screech, chafing on its iron rod? I want Zebulon heroic, crowing for freedom. From bare shoulders, I want him to spring iridescent feathers, green, red, black. I want him to wing out his arms, swoop onto the breast of clouds, soar beyond the honking V of geese, down the great river, flashing blue. Away from my enslaving eighth great grandmother, fly, fly away, Zebulon. Irony, he still serves me, shining and crowing in my head. Pries my voice from white pages, demands I look at every pore and scar of my own skin. What I do to him, what we do to each other. At my feet, a Rhode Island red scratches in the dirt with yellow claws, stirs the soil. I thought I was pretty educated on race in America, but I was shaken by what I didn't know, not just about our family history, but about slavery in colonial New England, about Calvinist theology. And I'm a reader, a researcher, so I started there as a way to put myself back together. Here's a poem called Our Family's First Century in Hadley. 1659. Back when the 49 founders followed their Calvinist gospel. Back when they laid out 8-acre lots with care that no one had better land than another. Back when my ancestor Samuel Porter built the modest house on Middle Street and everyone's cows grazed in the commons. Back then, they still honored the contracts with the Pequot and Nonotuck who sold them the land, welcomed them every spring to plant corn, fish the Connecticut, and a few stayed on, sold baskets and brooms. 1704. Back when the sumptuary laws forbade gold rings and lace collars, lest God punish them with war and pestilence, back when my forebears got rich, trading furs down the river, when others pointed fingers, named them river gods. Back when one snowy night, the French led Mohawk and Pocumtuck to attack Deerfield right next door, when they killed 48 townfolk, captured 140 in under 2 hours. 1752. Back when Samuel's grandson Moses acquired 600 acres beyond the commons. Back when he built his grand house with a 4-flued chimney and rusticated cladding. Back when the Nonotuck returned to plant corn and found fencing and dogs to run them off. Back when 2 years later, Captain Moses Porter was killed in the ambush of Bloody Morning Scout. And Porter's Pequot body servant delivered his sword to my 9th great-grandmother Elizabeth, who took to laudanum and rocking in a darkened room. I needed something concrete to anchor my reading, and so once COVID was lifting, I revisited the house, what's now the museum, where the 6 people we enslaved lived and labored.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
And so you can share the experience a little bit. The staff has wonderfully put together some slides to go along with my talk. So you see the house, the Porter-Phelps-Huntington house. 272 years ago, the most elegant in Hadley. Green front door framed by wavy glass. Now white clapboards graying. May to October, a straggle of museum goers ogle my ancestors' portraits. Too many Elizabeths. They don't see interns whir winter dust with a vintage Electrolux, don't see the annual unwrapping of patched quilts, threadbare sheets pulled from mahogany tables, sideboards, cradles. Pewter, polished, silver laid as if someone still lived there. 2, the house a map, a fingerprint still visible on the lead tea caddy Major General Lincoln used in the Revolutionary War, floorboards milled from local 200-year-old pine. The smell of smoked pork clings to the clay oven. Hundreds of footsteps indent the central hall stairs. Mary Huntington used her diamond ring to etch her name in the front bedroom window. Last visit before typhus took her. 3, Grandma dragged me here, age 8. Cobwebby smell, iron kettle big as a church bell swung in the fireplace. Rough tables on the back veranda. We picnicked on peanut butter sandwiches with grainy honey. Grandma never said the laborers, enslaved, indentured, apprenticed, slurped peas, porridge, and beans, sitting on these very benches. 4, Captain Moses Porter's sword, I touched it. Same one his Pequot servant passed through the window to Elizabeth putting her daughter to bed. The moans that night, her captain dead, 1754. Ambush of bloody morning scout. 5, now docents tell of the enslaved child, of the enslaved daughter, of the enslaved Peg Bowen, carried by another Elizabeth from the dank straw of her cellar bed, covered in sores, fevered, laid deep in a 6-slab chest by the fire so she'd be warm yet safe from embers. Dead that night from King's evil. I stroked the rust-hued wood, lid closed. My head was swimming. How do I link 200-year-old events to me today? In what ways am I accountable? It was the image, the sound of Zebulon's call that haunted me for years. Why was I stuck on him? Only when I learned he was not my stereotype of a dark African, but actually a light-skinned man, did I make the connection. Zebulon, age 21, climbing and calling out, could be a mirror image of Mel, the light-skinned Jamaican artist I met on a New York City stoop and married. Through the pandemic, I wrote poem after poem reflecting on all the cross-racial aspects of our marriage. Even though we lived through them all, I needed to do a better job separating our personal issues from the pressure that race and culture put on us living both in the US and Jamaica. And I thought about the era in which we married when integration was the goal. I'm going to read just a few sections from a longer poem that I called Wedding Album, one that I imagined. Wedding Album, August 1965. Staring match. Mel's Aunt Lilla insists we meet in a coffee shop far from her doorstep. Mel, his mom Joyce, and I can't stop staring at her long bleached hair pressed straight above layers of pancake makeup, slender nose. She glares at Mel's afro, her sister Joyce's curl twisting free on a brown neck. You're so pretty, Lilla eyes my sleek blonde page boy. She passes for white on Long Island. Joyce refuses to invite her to the wedding. The wedding party. Navy suit drapes Mel's supple frame. Our friends show up in tie-dye silver belt buckles, scarves, and bolos. Gay, straight, coupled, not. One lives out of his car, another in a cabin upstate. Only now, turning these pages, it hits me, all of them white. Gray stone and ivy. Easier if it rains, Mom said. Here we are, huddled in the Unitarian church, under its arched shadows, Bach tremolos. Most of us atheists. My Yankee grandmother's white hair strays from a loose bun under her one felt hat, brushed clean of cat fur. Jewish side of the family, in knits and pearls, check out the hymnals, the only ones to say aloud, what if your children turn out to be Black? Two hands. Joyce bakes us a Jamaican wedding cake laced with dark rum, not the three-tiered one we cut. Two hands on the knife, white plastic bride and groom teetering. We are an interracial couple when only 3% of US newlyweds were. But we were also an intercultural couple. So I'll read another short poem called About That Jamaican Wedding Cake. Dark fruit cake bedded under thick buttercream, so much rum it lasts for years. Tradition is to eat a slice at your wedding. We ate alone in the car driving north to our cliffside honeymoon in Cape Breton. 3 years later, another slice in a Brooklyn kitchen for the birth of our brown gold son, Adam. Not quite the traditional christening ritual. Mel's mom, Joyce, must have kept the remains. In her blue gown at Adam's wedding 25 years later, she pulls him aside, places in his hands a soft square cocooned in linen, stained brown with 200 proof Appleton. I see him cringe before thanking her, then slide it in the trash without showing his bride. I wonder, will he ever accept this gift? For 6 years, we had joined the hippie back to the land wave, leaving New York City for Western Massachusetts, only 30 minutes from the site of the Porter-Phelps-Huntington house. But we recognized after those 6 years the toll it was taking on Mel to be the only Black person around for miles. So we moved to Jamaica and reversed the roles. Native waters. 4 feet below, black daggered sea urchins, hundreds hawk white sand. My mask faulty, burbles full. I gasp, no air, no place to stand. Thrash the turquoise sea. We moved here on purpose. Raise our son in his father's land. Circle the surface, Mel instructs, then free dives 40 feet. Eye sure through coral, lattice, rose, and sapphire, spear gun cocked, silver tails flick. He bursts up, brandishing a parrotfish, strings it on the wire loop eye trail behind me. Each fish hangs a bloody flag. I worry about sharks. He dives again. I hold my position. White flesh, alien sea. Test the salt. Pray it buoys me over what teems below. I must find a mask that fits. Many enslaved people in colonial New England came off the sugar plantations in the Caribbean, not directly from Africa. In writing my book, I wondered, could my ancestors have enslaved Mel's ancestors? Especially after I found another text fragment and wrote this poem called Accounting. Another ancestor, Michael St. Agnan, was drowned while bringing back to Trinidad a cargo of African slaves from the mainland of Latin America. This tragic event is what's in the book, and I write, Michael, I refuse to let you curl silent on the ocean shelf. Brass buttons turn green beneath black bodies strewn among rusted chains and rum barrels. I haul your ghost up from the brine, stretch your shade out on the sand. Flies swarm all these years waiting for you to surface. Drowned 1821, you smuggler, you black marketeer, let the sun parch your skeleton dry as the brown cursive of your human ledger's promissory notes. Cousin Jimmy elides this part, brags about your luster pitcher, tortoiseshell combs rimmed with gold, deep-toned mahogany on dusty display at 40 acres. No matter how I swat away the buzz tormenting me on kelp-striped sand, your ridged coins keep multiplying deep in my pockets. I tried to move beyond anger to continue to find how I had internalized the racism I know has been passed on from one generation to the next. I imagined a dialogue with my 8th great-grandmother, whom we know through a diary she kept from 1763, that's before the Revolutionary War, till her death in 1817. Elizabeth was following the Calvinist creed, bring her slaves to Jesus so they would gain eternal freedom in the afterlife. I'm sure she thought of herself as a good person, like me, even though she owned slaves, had them sleep in a dark basement, dank basement, even though Zebulon ran away for a year and she tracked him down, sold him to a neighbor. It took me a while to get past judging, how could she, and instead ask, can I see myself in her? And here's one poem in dialogue with her, and it basically asks a question we can all relate to. When is help helpful? 2 points before we read it. A 7th son is a healer, and king's evil is a term for tuberculosis. Elizabeth Porter-Phelps' diary fragment, seventh son. Quote, February 1783, Thursday, my husband and I up to Mr. Aram's at Muddy Brook. He, a seventh son. We took Phyllis with us, thinks she has a king's evil. Elizabeth, biographers name your kindness to baby Phyllis despite enslaving her. Kind to bring her up from the freezing cellar, build a chest to keep her warm. Kind to drive the carriage up to Mr. Aram for laying on of hands. After her funeral, held in your long room, you write, a very pretty child. I hope she sleeps in Jesus. Your pious words rile me, self-serving, blind. How easily we split in two. What is kindness without equality? Not slavery, but every day I nail down my superiority. Overtip the $3 an hour server, share cutie oranges with the condo staff, hand down computers, winter coats, once a piano, to my undocumented trainer. Our two homes will go to our children. I step over the addict in the street. And I found new aspects of Elizabeth's life that tempered my distancing, my anger, even relating to her as a writer. New England slavery was not our movie image of Southern plantation slavery. Elizabeth often worked 16-hour days running a cheese-making business. She writes in this diary fragment, cheese, cheese, hay, hay, cooking, cooking, churning every other day. Sometimes I have had 2 days now that I have indulged myself in bed till near 5. But tomorrow morning, it must be a little after 3 that the butter may be worked in the cool air. I do not have time for thoughts and reflection. Elizabeth, I like your ditty, tugging against duty. And here's a question for each of us to ask ourselves. What will my descendants, 8 generations from now, look back at and ask, how could they? How could she? Perhaps you might put your first thoughts to how you'd answer this into the chat. And I'm going to end with an incident that all of us who are white or in any dominant role in the culture could have. It's titled, My Puritan White Skin, and it was inspired by a poem by B.C. Griffiths that he called the Big Gay Ass Poem. City Walgreens, plate glass, sunshine, single clerk, single line. Customers wig white peaks of frosting against blue-black skin, clerk's brown cheek and close-cropped afro. They chat, smile, unload, cart piled high. I'm waiting to ask the checker, where are the razor blades? I must be blind. Did I sigh? Shift my weight? The customer glares my way, cocks her head. The line forms behind me. I jump into place a good 10 feet back. Cheeks surge red. Stand there, feels like an hour. Can't bear it. Bolt from the store. Hound down the street. Never get it right. Thought I was polite. Off to the side. measured my distance, stopped dead mid-stride. It wasn't just me in that line, sun pouring in. It was my skin, my Puritan white skin. No wonder I jumped out of mine, turned inside out, back of the line. Skin, I must remember to see you. Though I've lived long in your pale veneer, trail of DNA, America, since 1639, cousin here, cousin there, lookalikes everywhere that shiver when other skin colors show up. I remember Harlem, 64, after the riots, men jeered Whitey at you clutching your welfare casebook on Lenox Avenue. 3 years in Kingston, Jamaica, the epithet was pork after the white meat of the pig. Bus ride, strap hanging teens snicker, smell of their armpits over you. Sure, you've grown callous, but I'm appealing to your soft side. Tender when I smooth sunscreen on you every morning. I love you all age spotted, all you've been through. No blame for carrying this DNA, but let's tell the truth, not ashamed or blind. We did plant our skin flag at the head of the line, used to that spot, used to getting what we want and being loved at the same time. Did the customer peel out of the store, exhausted by skin too? Was she furious, exhilarated? I can't know. White skin, sit still with me on this bench. Feel the rupture, white and black. How deep the wound, its raggedy lips. Let's start here. And I close asking, why does this book matter? And I think of our society today as a hand-knit wool sock, the kind my grandma made. We have holes in our sock. My grandma taught me how to darn. It was like magic. Stitch a circle around the hole and weave the thread or yarn over and under until the edges come together and the hole is gone. So I see my book as a circle around the hole. Me listening to Zebulon, us together today, listening to my story. And I hope if we all find and weave our own stories and listen deeply to each other, that we make new connections, a healing, a patch that remakes the sock stronger than before. That's my wish for us and for this book in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's just so wonderful to hear you read these poems and just, yeah, so inspiring and moving. I know there are many people here, and I just want to make space for questions, curiosities, celebrations from all of you. And so as people can raise their hands, or you can put questions in the chat. There's a lovely kind of recap comment in the chat from Rocky. That speaks my heart. I think you could all feel this too from the way that Nancy put the poems together for this reading, but I think even stronger in the book, the ways in which each poem is powerful in itself, but they make a larger whole, really more than most books of poetry I can think of, that the arc of them and the ways that the same scenes and stories come back over different poems and mean more and mean differently as they return. And so I'm wondering, as people get up their courage to ask you questions, if you could talk a little. Oh, I see a person. Martha, go ahead.
I don't want to ask a question. I just want to applaud Nancy. And I want to applaud her for writing an incredibly brave book. She has done research in two directions. She's done research out and she's done research within. And both of those things are very brave. She's also brought to our attention, Nancy, I should talk to you.
Either way.
One thing I think is so important about this book is that it's about slavery in New England in the North. I grew up in the Midwest and we learned about slavery, but it was a Southern thing. And it takes a lot of digging to find out what that history is in the places where most of us apparently are right now. So I just want to applaud you and say how important and how important this book is and how grateful I am to you for writing it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I see Brooks has a comment about what does my son Adam feel about the book. A lot of people who know me ask that question. His first statement when I finally got him to read it, which took a bit, was, "Well, that must have been cathartic for you, Mom." So I never did delve too far into what he meant, but one piece that's in the book, but I didn't raise today, is that his dad, Mel, has been estranged from him and from Adam and Adam's children for 19 years. And so it's a story with this huge gap. I think Adam needs his own cathartic moments that he'll get to it as he goes in his life. But that he and the rest of the family have that same sort of pride about, oh, wow, Mom, you did this, you got it published, you're out there trying to figure out social media and, learn TikTok and stuff. They're more interested in that part of it right now. But I think this is something that'll seep in. Yeah. Karen, you're muted.
When you were saying that, and I was remembering this wonderful image late in the book where Mel catches him in the air. And so I think there is a kind of like there are healing wish moments in the book for that.
Oh, yeah.
For that too. So
yeah. No, very much so.
Rosemary, you need to unmute also. Not that I was good at that.
Okay. My name tag is on the screen, but I'm Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Nancy, I just read your book last night. It went by instantly. It's so engrossing and so well written and so evocative and colorful. But hearing you read it now took me not only back to my experience of reading it myself, but then I heard ways that your interpretation differed from mine. And not very often and not very far, but it was interesting. So now I have two versions of your book to take with me. And that kind of like is a stereo of my experience of it and how I read it to myself and how you read it to me. That made it very special, and I loved it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Mhm.
So Nancy, from the very beginning, when we first started, I teared up because I have you be a sister of my heart. And I so admire your tenacity. It's like, God, I'm going after this. I'm going after me. I mean it. I'm not stopping. 8 years, you said, and you were probably dreaming about it and thinking about it before then. And I grew up in the Deep South, so I understand, that you were much more active in your youth than I was. I didn't march to Montgomery, but my dad would have killed me, but whatever. I wouldn't be alive today if I'd done that. But so thank you just for being you and the courage that it takes you to be alive. And I really admire your work, and that you as a white person were able to reckon with yourself and come out on the other side. So thank you. You're a role model.
Right. I mean, I'm the one who benefited, because for me, the most exciting thing is that I had this initial reaction and this distancing and, oh no. And then as I did the work, and more and more parts would come in, so I got bigger. And I'm the one who feels like a fuller person for this work. And I'm happy that we have this whole history and that I can weave it into where I am now. And that question of how does racism, how does white supremacy, how does it pass? Is it epigenetic? Is it just, messages, the messages that get unconscious in us? And I'm still on this track of not just looking back, but to get conscious is so hard. So, yeah.
Karen?
Yeah, I also admire your courage, Nancy, and congratulations on the birth of your book. I know it's been a long labor, so congratulations. And what I admire most is your uncovering, your digging in and seeking to understand, and to some extent acceptance of the history. And so much of our history in this country is whitewashed or hidden. So kudos to you for exposing the truth and what really happened. I was really taken by your question around, call it 6 or 7 generations from now, what are our ancestors going to look back, or our descendants look back on, and kind of maybe not with such favorable eyes on us, and what might that look like? I might start a list. So, but again, congratulations.
I think this is what was meant by sort of researching, looking hard into the past, but also looking hard into yourself, and many of the moments that are really powerful for me at the in the wedding poem, that sort of recognition that all of the friends who had gathered for the wedding were white, and that sort of sense of things you hadn't seen at the time that you see now looking in your own life too.
Yeah.
That feels very, I think, pushing us all to look at our lives and see the things that we're being blind to.
Nancy, I'd like to report on a pretty tough moment while we were reading this. There's that moment where the relationship with Mel and the memory or the recovery of Zebulon's bodily presence gets very sexualized. And I kind of sat myself by actually thinking, oof, even if I went through the cathartic or the hard thinking exercise of recognizing something like that, if a male white author would be doing the same kind of traffic, it would be really, really complicated, if not difficult to swallow. So that's just one moment where I just got tripped from the celebration of the healing healing of the white soul to the moment where, oof, is healing the white soul going to be a problem? Do we can we use something as strongly bodily as the connection between Mel and Zebulon through you? Is that ever going to be a clean, totally healing recovery? It's something that I don't know how to ask this completely, but I'll leave it at that, and you don't have to react to it. But I'm thanking you for the honesty and the need to do this kind of exercise, and at the same time, I'm confessing to having been tricked myself into something that I had a hard time to swallow.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I do think that there's tons of little trips and bump knees and landmines that I kept finding, and I don't think I got through half of them. And yeah, the fact that it took this weird thing about my seeing the words about Zebulon and going straight to my stereotypes. You know, I straight away made him dark, and then, you know, all these things. And it was all those years that I'm researching, looking at all this stuff, and I don't make the link, because I keep thinking, what am I doing in my life today, blah, blah, blah. And I completely skipped over the 20 years marriage to Mel and all the lived experience that I had, and then how I had to look back and begin to pull that apart. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right, that making that, the way that connection came through in my head between my picture of one body and my picture of another body is completely an example of I don't know exactly how to put it, but, you know, associative unconscious stuff in one's head that doesn't always come out clean, that's for sure. So good question.
Rosemary. Well,
You're
good.
I I just wanted to acknowledge that I think this is such a brilliant piece of work on so many different levels. And Nancy and I talked yesterday, and I said, you know, this is an individual story, it's a group story, it's an organization story, it's a system-wide story, and you can enter in any which way, and it's so personalized that it is that anyone can pick it up and find something in it, whether it's on the individual level or an organizational level. I mean, it's so I think I guess what I want to say is that there's an artistry here that I think needs to be into our society that allows people to do their own work wherever they are in their journey.
And I think the opportunity to have dialogues like this are very important for the work. So I just wanted to share that with you publicly, Nancy.
And I know I'm sure close to the end time, but I want to say, Karen, that and for all of you to recognize the work that they're doing at the museum is so exciting. The museum sits in the 5-college community of Western Mass with Smith College, Mount Holyoke College, Amherst College, where Karen is, and a big University of Massachusetts campus, and Hampshire College still alive, I think so. And the archives and the material that have been collected from the centuries of this family are a precious resource, and they're now archived at the University of Massachusetts in a collection where they're accessible. I think accessible, or at least more than they were when I was trying to do this. And the training of the docents and the telling of the stories when you go through the museum now are way expanded to include a lot of what we're talking about today. And there are museums all over the North now that are beginning to tell these stories of enslavement, and there are lots of other forms of labor on these little farms. So it's beginning to get out into the world, and I'm just so proud of little tiny Porter-Phelps-Huntington Museum for the work they're doing and how much it helped me, and how much the people that get there or come through or go on the website. There's an amazing amount of material on the website, and you will see how much of it I just stole off the website for my book. Wasn't like I was buried in the stack somewhere. So just wanted to.
Well, thank you. And
that.
I think we are all learning how to tell these stories, and I think you are a model for that learning, and just, yeah, the continuing to be curious and brave, and to see the healings and the possibilities in that. So it's just such a pleasure and a delight. At the in a journal note that Nancy puts at the beginning of the book, she writes, "I've been retelling this story so I can make it real, so I can see who I am without excuses, so I can be seen without hiding. But the story is not about me. It's about how we created the society at the origins of the United States, how we keep it that way, and how we must change it." And I hope to send you all out from this Zoom into this world a little bit more background, a little bit more backbone too, for making that change. Can we unmute and give Nancy a good round of applause?
Fantastic.
And
Wow.
Thank
Excellent.
you
It was
both.
so great
so
to hear
much.
you speak it.
Yeah, it's really, it was just fabulous to have you all here and to have so many people together. It's just great. Thank you so much.
Good job, Nancy. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
So fabulous.
So happy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was following along a little bit just because
No,
I was to see the words too.
yeah, it's a good way to do it. Yeah, very good. Well,
That is recorded.
and the best thing is tell your own stories to other people. I mean, and they may not be enslavement stories. They could be stories like, families keep secrets. It could be, all those World War II vets who can never talk about their experience until their deathbeds. I mean, or all the wars we've had. We get everybody with that trauma. I mean, we need to talk.
Nancy, Karen was reading out loud to me in the car while I was driving, and I missed about 4 exits.
Well, I don't know if that's my wish for the book. May you all go out and be lost.
Wow. Mm.
Oh, and if you want to really hear, I'm going to give you my shameless marketing. You can get the book through any of your local bookstores, and they can order it and get it in. And we love to support our local bookstores. But I'm also on Amazon. Amazon is nuts. If you get 20 reviews in the first month since your book release, then it moves you up the algorithm, and they start putting you on other, if you read this book, you'll want to read this one. It starts moving it up. I am at about 14 reviews, and we've got till the 27th. So just a couple more days to get a few more. You just scroll all the way down to reviews. You don't have to be erudite. You don't have to do anything. Hit the stars and say, I haven't read it yet, but I heard Nancy the other day and I had fun. Whatever you want, it can be. But let's get to 20, you guys. That while you're missing your exit.
All right, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Do it now.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Mm.
Bravo, Nancy. Bravo.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thanks,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, so good to see you all. John, oh, how great. I didn't even know everyone who was on. So this is fun.
And I can't find you anyway here. Where
Where are you? I'm glad you're still there. John and I know each other since college, but John is a wonderful novelist. So, first writer I ever knew personally. So that's
I'm
great.
sorry I can't see you. I'll just work on this.
Let's see. I'll make noise. You can put me on the speaker view, and then I'll show up if I keep being obnoxious.
I'm sorry to be so late, and I'll explain that all to you later.
Oh, I didn't know when you came in. So, anyway, guys, it's good.
Thank you, Karen, for
Thank you.
inviting Nancy.
Yeah.
Hi, Nancy.
Bye,
Just came
darling.
in for the very goodbye, Nancy. I will be sending you an email later.
Okay.
I only got your book in the mail today. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, I think this has been recorded and it's going to get put up on your website.
Yes, it'll be posted on the museum.
Excellent.
website.
Wonderful.
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
So it will. I'll get to see what it looked like.
Yeah, good.
It will continue on for a long time.
Yeah.
Let me say just the very last thing. I got it this afternoon, and I came in at 5 o'clock, and I've read the first pages, and beautifully done. It just draws you right in as a story, right from the start.
Yeah.
No,
That was my experience too. I couldn't put it down. I had to read the whole thing. And Nancy, your image of filling and weaving the circle. I have my grandmother's darning ball, and I have her thimble, and I feel like you really did the work to show us how we can start making our threads, because we know they're holes that we don't know about.
Yeah.
As the publisher of the book, I'm really so pleased that everybody at the reaction of everybody, and it's just a pleasure to be here.
And you made a beautiful book too. When I got my copy, I had imagined it more normal book shape, and it was so lovely to have this square, and the way the different typefaces for the diary or handwriting faces for the diary and things like that. Just beautifully
wonderful.